First, I'd like to start off and thank the conference organizers for giving me the opportunity to share this story on behalf of my collaborators on how we can all work together as aquariums to investigate common sea dragon reproductive events in aquaria. So I'm going to talk on behalf of my colleagues at Birch Aquarium, Georgia Aquarium, New England, Oceanario, Ocean Park, Seas, Sea Life, and I work for Seasark. And our logo has a nice little sperm on it. And we specialize in creating solutions for reproductive challenges in zoos and aquariums and conservation centers. So my leader, Linda, actually focuses on how to freeze sperm and biobank them into the future because it's a lot easier to ship sperm than to ship a giraffe. And so this is helping with all of our different zoos and aquariums reproductive programs. We'll also do hormone monitoring through fecal samples so that we can monitor when a female is pregnant or ready to become pregnant. And then we also conduct reproductive assessments. So we can learn how to ultrasound animals in managed care and then use that same technique to ultrasound animals in the wild. And then for myself, I came in as the aquatic researcher, where my background is on how to raise ornamental fishes. And with that, I got to combine my new love, which is data visualizations for welfare monitoring. So in aquariums, we like to collect data systematically so that we can monitor how their environments are changing or how we can see why an animal is not using a certain spot of the habitat. So if I found my sweet spot is in data visualizations and GIS, so geographic information systems. I love making maps and showing how animals move within an aquarium or a zoo. So I'm going to talk to you about this project that has been a special side quest again for me, where I found that in zoos and aquariums, it's hard to find published work. If you were to come into the lens of a traditional scientist and look only for what peer-reviewed literature has been done on sea dragons, you're only going to find one publication. But I can tell you that there are other forms of gray literature or reports where you can find that Sea Life has been successful in raising sea dragons. We have a manual that was published in 2005 on how that was also to be successful for Long Beach Aquarium as well as Tennessee. But behind all of that is also information through email exchanges that happened on forums or even spreadsheets that sit on aquarists' computers and traditional leaf sheets where they have recorded their successful egg transfers in their aquariums, but they're all spread everywhere. So in that meeting that Angela was mentioning, that where we have a bunch of sea dragon, I call it our sea dragon fan club. There's over 100 of us that are working with sea dragons, and what we found is that there are over 140 records of egg transfers. And out of those 140, 83 of them will have the transfer result in a successful hatch. And earlier in the 2000s, there were actually more unsuccessful hatches, but you can see there's a big turn of events after 2017, where now we are becoming better and we're having more of those egg transfers end up with success. So here's an example of my love for maps. So I've created this database where you as an aquarist can explore geographically where there has been success at different aquariums, and then you can also then scan all of the different information that was associated with that event. So because our data was varied from being on a spreadsheet or being on a piece of paper, some folks would record a lot of things such as food, temperature, water quality, aquarium height, and then other facilities will just give you the day the egg transfer happened. So because of all of that, I just wanted to create a database that organizes all of that through a very fancy Excel spreadsheet. So then the aquarists can now go through the Excel spreadsheet and start thinking about what kind of questions they would like to ask in their facilities. So one of the things I noticed a lot of folks would do with their data is they would record their temperature profiles by month. So here is over the course of 1 year for 2 facilities, where in the beginning we had success when the temperature was replicating seasons. So you'd have a cold temperature and then a higher temperature. But then over time in the early 2010s, we started having success where industries or aquariums weren't even touching their temperature at all. And they were still being able to get success in their facilities. So that got me thinking, is it because what I'm showing you here is at a monthly scale? What if we were to explore their data at a daily scale, and maybe their daily scale, there is enough drop, like maybe it's just a 1 or 2 degrees centigrade drop that we need to signal the sea dragons to reproduce. Another data point, which I also found in the records of aquariums, is everybody, or not everybody, a lot of facilities were recording what the moon phase was. So this is, common that we've known for a lot of reef fishes, such as groupers and snappers, that have shown evidence of lunar synchronized spawning, at which they respond to moonlights and or tides. And a lot of aquarists were thinking, do sea dragons behave this way? And so the goal of this project was to not try to create an experimental design where I would have one aquarium, have like 8 replicate sea dragon tanks, because that would be very difficult. Instead, we want to take a big step back. What happens before reproduction? And it actually is a lot of really adorable courtship behaviors. So we wanted to take a step back and look at what facilities are experiencing at what level of courtship. And then from there, we can collect all of the different parameters, such as diet, aquarium size, water quality, filtration systems, cleaning schedules, and then see how then we can use a PCA to then go look into that more deeply. And then also, I wanted to retroactively analyze all of those egg transfers and egg release dates in relation to the lunar characteristic. When I looked in the notes, the folks were just we were just recording the lunar phase. So you only had a few phases. But if we look at it, the lunar cycle, you have 29 days. So I was like, let's look at it more deeply. So with the helps of aquariums, we are able to validate or create an ethogram of what all of the courtship behaviors are. So here, with the help of our experts, they actually cataloged and categorized and described every single phase of a sea dragon courtship. So it starts off with unrequited tail curling, where only one sea dragon has his tail curled, and then it has requited tail curling, which is commonly known as mirroring in the industry. And then they had this really fun word where a lot of aquariums would call them dancing, wiggling, shaking, wrestling. But instead of calling it that, we went back to the literature and found that seahorses and pipefish nudge and quiver. And then when you look at the definitions, they match to what sea dragons do as well. And sea dragons also have the ability to change the color of their skin, just like seahorses. So we indicated brightening. And then the male and female, when they are getting closer to reproduction, the female's cloaca will get large, the male's tail will get spongy, and then when the time starts to become right, you'll see the sea dragons try to point and go up to the water surface. And sometimes he'll point up to the surface, but the other sea dragon won't respond. But if you're lucky, then both will point and then both will rise. And they will do this several times until when the female's eggs are ready, they can rise, and then they will end in them being released. But like I said before, there were a lot of times where eggs would be released, but they wouldn't be successfully caught onto the male's tail. But in the last couple of years, we've had lots of success where aquarists would come in the morning and see a male gravid with eggs. So now that we made this ethogram and have it all described, how do we share all of this information? And there is a platform used by the zoo and aquarium community called Zoo Monitor. It's a free program made by Lincoln Park Zoo where you can create your ethogram and have all your descriptions and set up a timer and then put a map on of your facility, and you can actually document all of your behaviors for your facility. So we put it on this platform, and we invited anybody who wanted to join in. They can see our research proposal, they can see our IUCOOK approval number, and also the requirements to join the study. And because we had two major commitments that we asked for aquariums. And the first major commitment is you must be able to watch your animals for at least a year, 3 times a week. And then we also have to be able to be okay with putting a temperature logger into your aquarium so that we can record temperature, and we can also record light intensity. So here's an example of the hobo logger that we asked every single institution to deploy. And then from our call to action, we were able to get 6 facilities to run this study within 2 years. So here, I'm going to show you kind of the raw data of all of the behaviors. And then as we're going to go across, if the cell is black, that means we never saw that behavior. But if the cell is gray, that means that we saw it between 1 to 3 times over the course of a year. And if it's green, that means we saw that behavior at least 4 times during the study. And as you go to the right, you'll see that there are going to be more and more behaviors filling in the cells. And we did have egg drops happen at all of our facilities. And Birch Aquarium was our one facility during the study at which eggs were successfully transferred onto the male. And so this was just a way for me to visualize the data. And then we ran a PCA to see if there are any parameters that might be driving courtship. And through the PCA, we were able to detect that the group size has an influence on how much behavior is happening in each of the aquariums. And so here, you can see after the PCA, we run a multilinear regression where we can see that here, the more animals that you have, the higher your average score for the day of courtship would happen. So I changed the words, of the behaviors into scores. So they got a number score for every single day. And if they nudged right here 300 times, they would still get the number 3 as the total score for the day. But if they were watching their animals and they only saw one thing, let's say they only saw unrequited pointing, they would receive a 7 for that day. And so then, I was really excited to be able to detect this with the PCA because historically, when I was looking into our database, not a lot of institutions were even recording group size at that time. And it could be that because during that time, they were more focused on photoperiod and temperature. So I wanted to pose to the group that maybe what we missed in public aquariums is that there was a social component. Maybe they needed more competition or more mate choice to be able to create an environment that will have reproduction end with a successful egg transfer. And so now I just want to go through the next goal, which was looking at all the egg transfers. So we were able to gather the egg drops from not only the institutions in this study, but we also partnered with all the sea lives across the globe and SeaWorld Orlando to get a sample size now of 240 egg exchanges. And to look at the lunar cycle, I wanted to show you here where the new moon is going to be in the middle. So the lunar cycle is about 29 days. So this new moon's going to be day 0, and as you move to the right, it's going to be day 14, and then over here to day 28. And we were also able to detect that the data is not uniform. So if there was no lunar effect, then all of the data would be distributed evenly. But we were able to detect a peak around the new moon, and then another small peak here in the full moon. So you might be wondering, can the sea dragons even feel the moon in a building? I don't know, but I do know they can feel the lighting. So now if you look at the moon, and we looked at not now the lunar cycle, but how bright was the moon during the day of the transfer. So that means a new moon has 0 brightness, and then the full moon has 100% brightness. And when we look at the egg releases,
here you can see again that for the egg releases, there are pieces.
Sorry, this is an old recording from, okay, sorry, that was my practice recording from earlier. But yeah, no, you can see now the stronger peaks around the new moon, and the full moon. Okay. No. There. Okay, so with that, I thought it was really interesting to now that we can look more closely at photoperiod characteristics because the technology has gotten a lot better in public aquariums. We are able to, time spawning in corals to the day because we are able to control temperature and photoperiod, not only, looking at how long the lights are on, but what is your intensity of your lights at night? And so I really think that is another key that we can start looking into to how now we can actually time reproduction. So we're not like Angel where we have too many sea dragons. So we can create an environment and control how when we want our sea dragons to breed. And I also wanted to tell you that the dashboard that I showed earlier is going to be available to our aquarium or research community so that you can also look into it. And to this day, I want to congratulate POMA for being the new institution for holding the most successful egg transfers and broodings on the planet.